it's just frustrating when we do get successes in the industry that desperately needs them, to look at someone higher up the chain than us that could have done a better job and made things better for everybody, but instead was like, no, I don't want to take that risk. You guys take that risk.
Come on and visit for any occasion. Don't keep patting down waiting. Comics and conversation. Keep the conversation moving along. Keep reading comics, keep your local store strong. If it's hard, then it's a job for the challengers. Comics and conversation, y'all.
From Challengers Comics and Conversation in Chicago, this is Contest of Challengers. And now, here are Patrick Brower and W. Dal Bush.
We did ship our names today. Our name ship is Keltrick.
Okay, that's good.
Well, it's that or Patsy.
I mean, Patsy's not bad, but
it's
also
a name.
It is, but I mean, sometimes that's cute.
Well, yeah, I know. But she also forgot what it was.
Uh-huh.
So she goes, what was it? Pelsey? And I go, no, both our names have 2 syllables. If we're shipping, we each get a syllable.
You get 1 syllable.
You're not, I'm not just, it's not just the first letter, Kelsey. It's got to be half of it.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, yeah.
Well, I hope it takes off, but obviously I feel like it's got some resistance.
It does. And also there's no reason for it to be shipped because she is my physical therapist.
We need reasons for these things now?
I know.
That is not my understanding of pop culture in 2019.
I forgot how it came up. And the reason we're talking about name shipping is because I'm in the middle of physical therapy for my old man hip, which is slowing me down. And when you add the pain in my hip to the punishing heat of the store...
Sure. I think in general...
I don't want to do anything.
I think in general your physical disabilities are down to like 50% age, 30% comics retail as an industry, and like 20% bad decision making. Like that's how that's how I break up that pie chart.
How do you factor the bad decision making into the comic retail part of it?
It's different.
Like
this is just general bad decision making.
Okay, not the bad decision of comic book retail.
No, that's its own separate tragedy.
Okay.
I mean the ones where like a steady accrual of, oh, I shouldn't have done that thing that one night, and now my body is destroyed. Or a continuing level of, I should never have sat that way all the times I've been sitting down.
I mean, if you look at patterns in your life as an adult that you think, oh, if I've never started doing this, that's a lifetime of changes.
Sure. But I think 50% of it is just anyone at your age is going to be dealing with
I agree.
Their body not needing to exist as long as it is.
I hope you're taking notes.
Oh, I don't plan on living nearly that long. I'm hoping dodging that bullet by a swift, steady, immediate decline.
There was a meme that talked about, your middle age when, and one of the things was, you complain about all your ailments to your friends. And I thought, well, I do that all the time, because there's so many. But
I don't know.
There's a lot of bad decision making. Like, there's a lot of things I've done my entire retail career that are things that if I'd said, oh, can someone else help me lift this? Or I don't have to jump from this ladder to that ladder. I can climb down, walk over, and climb back up.
I remember a comic book convention some years ago when we were back working at a different establishment. And you were largely in charge of a lot of what was happening when the booths were being torn down and packed back up. But it was at the time where you had just been diagnosed with a hernia. Mm-hmm. And so it was basically, Patrick shouldn't be lifting anything because he's got a hernia. We should be doing that for him. And as soon as you found out that was like the spoken rule, you lifted like 25% more than you did the previous year. You were so offended that other people would be like, hey, we need to take care of this so Patrick doesn't exert himself, that you exerted yourself way more.
Well, first of all, I feel like I wouldn't have done that if I felt that everybody else, you not included, was pulling my weight.
Okay.
If you take me out of the equation, everyone else needs to step up. And I felt everybody else was doing less than normal.
I don't know if that was
Second of all, there's a fine line between wanting to sit one out and being pitied.
I never thought it was being pitied, and you might have seen it that way, and maybe that's what motivated you. But I think for us, it was just this is an ailment where if he pushes himself, he's going to make it worse.
Okay, but there's a third aspect to this as well. How long did those fucking teardowns take?
It took a while, don't get me wrong. But, I mean, we had a bunch of people, and you do a lot of work. And
We never have enough people.
But and I would say that you're, integral to those loadouts, but it's not as though the loss of one person or one person doing slightly less and maybe moving into more of an oversight role rather than a hands-on role was going to keep us there for another day or whatever.
Well, it's funny that you should bring this up because...
Is that why we're laughing so hard?
I have had... I can't laugh. I have a hernia. Wait, no. I've been thinking about already the potential, and it's just potential because we haven't done anything about it, but for a very long time now, we have both wanted, you especially, new carpet or flooring in the store.
Real bad.
And now we have kind of a timetable for it. All I can think about is how much backbreaking physical labor has to happen in a 24-hour period for that to be accomplished.
Yeah, just the getting stuff off of the main floor so that the old carpet can be taken up and new flooring can be put down is something where we will basically need everybody associated with the store. And I don't just mean like the women who help us out on a weekly basis. I mean everybody we know with two working hands.
This will be a 2-day all hands on deck.
Yeah.
In theory, it'll be a Monday night. I assume we're closed Tuesday.
I think we'd have to.
We'd have to be.
Yeah, that's why I think we always planned on doing it on a Tuesday because that's usually the one day a week where we can be like, man, we can get away with
and that
not
means,
being open.
Like it'll have to be hopefully within summer fall, so I can at least pull the books in the garage.
Yeah, I think that was the other thing because there's a lot of work in the beginning to clear out space so that the people who are installing the new flooring have room to work. But while they're doing that, there's kind of nothing we can do. So I would expect that point to be when, in a different part of the store, the garage or what have you, we'll be opening the week's books and checking stuff in and playing club and doing all that stuff.
Shit, we could both do that together because...
Yeah, because there's nothing else to do.
Yeah. And then, because I don't want to do the... Let's move everything to half the store so we can carpet that half, then move everything onto the new carpeted half, we can carpet... I want as much empty as possible, using sidekicks, using the back hallway.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, when it's all installed, putting everything back.
Everything has to get plugged back in and turned on and make sure it's all
oh my
working.
God. I'm not looking forward to that. You did this once before.
Yeah.
And, wasn't it, partial? Like, this part of the store, move everything, this part of the store...
Probably. I don't remember it that well, to be honest with you.
It's too bad, because I figured something that monumentally strenuous would be a thing that...
No, I spent, how long working at the other place?
I don't know, a long time.
How long were you there for?
17 and a half years.
So 16 and a half years.
No, 17.
17 years? So, I did a lot of stuff, and
I started in August. You started the following May.
Those memories are mostly all in, cold storage because they're not super pertinent to what I'm doing in my life anymore. So I only have to dig back into them every so often, and I don't have as much recall for what happened when and at which store. I just remember doing a lot of those sorts of activities. Nearly every 6 months, somewhere in the chain, there was something that needed to be done. If it wasn't your store... It was a new store or someone who's moving or someone who was having work done in their store. So you were constantly, every 6 months spending a weekend somewhere helping somebody do something.
Right.
If it wasn't your store, it was theirs.
And that's how we learned so many construction things and shortcuts and sheets and...
Best practices, honestly.
For example, we had... a gentleman in this week pricing out new window treatments for us because we've wanted new window treatments for a very long time.
Much like the carpeting, it's 11 years old and it was never meant to last 11 years.
And we just bought $15 roll pull-down shades from Home Depot, and I mounted them all.
Yeah.
And... they're crooked and not centered, and there were some mishaps in the mounting, little by little, what have you. They're fine, but if we're paying someone to do it, we don't want fine. And this guy has if we go with him, has already a vision in mind and trying to make everything even and symmetrical and a little out further, and he said, I don't want to criticize the guy who put these up originally. I'm like, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. But the difference is it cost us $15 per window to put those
how
up.
many windows? 12?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Versus significantly more.
Yeah. Like maybe 8 times that.
Like $180 is what we paid, give or take tax and whatever.
Yeah.
And the few replacements we've done. Times 20.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you get what you pay for, but and don't get me wrong, I would in a heartbeat love to say yes, please.
Oh, sure.
Do it. It's just not immediately accessible as far as funds go.
Yeah, it's definitely a conversation that we're having.
So here's a conversation that is being had, and that would easily earn us the money for these new windows.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not serious about it, but it is a thing, I say thing because I couldn't think of practice was the word, that other retailers have started to enact, and more than you would think.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a thing that, first of all, like I said, would save us, it would save us a lot of money every year.
Okay.
I mean, I'm talking upwards of 5 digits.
Okay.
But it's also a thing that I just don't, I can't wrap my head around. So here it is. Here it is in a nutshell. And before you immediately dismiss it, I'm not saying we should do it, but I want to talk about the fact that other stores are doing it.
Okay.
Making credit card users pay the fee. Did I phrase that okay? Do you know what I mean?
You did.
Okay. So it is a trend. First, there are some providers apparently that are calling and trying to get people to switch to their new system, and the new system automatically puts it on the consumer.
Okay.
Secondly, there are stores that already do this. Now, what I'm saying, if you're not following along, listener, is that if you are paying for a credit card...
You're paying with a credit card.
What did I say? Did I say 4? Oh.
Yeah. Like if there's a $20 transaction, you're buying $20 worth of comics from Challengers, and you pay with a credit card, normally you would pay $20. That goes on your credit card.
Right.
We as a store don't get $20. We get $20 minus whatever percentage our credit card processor charges.
Let's just, for the sake of argument, call it 3%.
Yeah, let's say 3%, just for easy math. So while we're giving you $20 retail worth of product and you're giving us $20, when we get money from the credit card processor, we're only getting $19.40.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. Which 3%, not a lot, but when you're doing hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of credit card transactions in a year, that 3% is, like Patrick said, 5 figures worth of money that you are not getting, that the processor is getting instead. And more transactions are becoming credit card transactions. When I was doing this a couple decades ago, it might have been, 60 or 70% cash, 30% cards. It's completely the opposite now.
I would say
more to.
I would say it's like 70, almost 80% cards. We literally had, I think we talked about this, we had a day a few weeks ago that was a 0 cash day.
Yeah.
Not a single cash transaction.
Yeah. So credit card processing fees for stores are serious expenditure. It is a lot of money that stores end up having to pay out to accept credit cards.
And I want to point out, and this is a thing consumers don't necessarily know, but now almost all, not all, but almost all cards have the chip.
Mm-hmm.
So for our specific processor, we pay X number percent for that transaction. If your chip is bad,
or you don't have one,
and we have to use the swipe, the magnetic swipe, not only do we pay that original percentage, but then there's a swipe fee added on top of like 26 cents that's automatically added to the transaction that we're paying for. And if your swipe is bad and we have to enter it by hand, or we do have mail order customers, which we're grateful for, but we're charged even more for typing the information in by hand, which also slows the transaction down and is not my favorite way of doing things. But we're earning even less on that sale. And then, to make matters even more less cost effective for our mail order people, we only ever charge what the cost of shipping is. Is that correct? Like if it's $7.35?
Yes.
But then they're paying for that shipping with a credit card.
Oh, yeah.
So we're literally losing money on the shipping.
That's true.
So it's all the credit card processing industry has always been about hidden fees and nickel and diming the businesses. And there are stores now that just want to pass that on to the consumer. And there are distributors that we use that do that charge us a fee. That they basically, it's a cash bonus, but we don't have the ability to pay them cash.
Yeah.
And when we've tried to get off this and be on, okay, we'll give you a check every week, they don't want to do it.
Why would they? It's way easier for them to take a credit card.
Of course it is, but it's more expensive for us.
Sure.
And in a day and age where, cutting all cards, just the mere fact of us now being able to electronically pay Diamond, finally in 2019, where we can pay them online, that has saved us like $40 a month in bank fees. Yeah. I mean, that's $40. No, it's $40.
I'll take that. I'll take $40.
So when you add, $10,000 or more in credit card transaction fees. So now, go ahead.
Oh, absolutely not.
Oh,
yeah.
Right,
not even for a second, no. I see what you're saying, and I'm listening to the rationalizations, but to me...
I was never suggesting we do it,
I know,
but I just wanted to...
But I mean, listening to all the various reasons that the industries we use are moving away from absorbing the fees and putting them onto... if it's another store, they're putting it on the customer. If it's a distributor, they're putting it on us. I'm hearing all that, and I'm sure it makes sense for them. But if I walked into a store and on a regular basis they were like, oh, you want to use a credit card because you don't carry cash because everyone uses credit cards now? Cool, you're paying us 5% more. Like, that would be... I would have a much dimmer view of that company. I don't know that I would stop using them entirely, but I would feel more taken advantage of. And so I would be reluctant as a business owner to make that a part of my business model. There are some things that are just, this is what it takes to run a business in 2019. And the mentality of trying to push all of your fees off onto customers is, I think, one of the grosser elements of capitalism in 2019. You can see it happening everywhere. I got pissed off so many times when I would go to the Regal app and try to buy a movie ticket, and they'd be like, oh, cool, it's a convenience fee. You're charging me a fee to get a ticket through your app to go to your theater.
Yep.
Like, that's something I have to pay because you contracted with a company that wants a cut of this? Like, that should come from Regal's end. But no, it doesn't. It comes from my end. Regal gets 100% of what they would get if I walked into the theater, and then I pay the additional fee. We do it sometimes. I think we've done it on when we do Eventbrite stuff, because Eventbrite charges.
Yeah.
So like when we did the CM Punk event, when we're doing Champions Day.
Well, okay,
like
sure,
that's something that we could pay Eventbrite as a platform for their fees, but for us, it just feels like, no, you're gonna
right.
You're someone's but
also for the few times we've used Eventbrite, it's not for a party where it's this amount of money. The ticket price is the retail price of a book that you are getting to attend this event. Mm-hmm. So we choose to not lose money on the book that we're already paying for to get you to come to this event.
Yeah.
So it's not as if it's an arbitrary admission extra. It's not like we're just saying, all right, and it's $5 to be here at this thing. Mm-hmm. The only time we've had an admission price for an event was for the 2 Nerd Year's Eve parties, and we went out of our way to make sure people were getting as much or more than they were paying for.
Sure.
When you consider the Tom Kelly kitties they got, the gift cards they got, the champagne, not only that, but the entertainment that was provided and things like that all have values associated to them. So, and I'm sure that a lot of people do that. Like it's a value additive situation. But for the Eventbrite things, you know, if we charged you $5 to meet Jason Aaron and CM Punk, and you got a $5 book.
Yeah.
And you got to meet them. Mm-hmm. And get, you know, up to 5 signatures from Punk and
But you were just buying the book.
Right. And then you had to pay the fee for the that's a thing. So I'm routinely mad when, as a consumer, in whatever regard, whether it be me personally or my store buying something from someone to resell, that when we have to eat the cost for it.
Yeah, and some of it's just basic elements of, again, kind of capitalism in 2019. Like, you go to Target, and most of the time you're going to have to go to the self-checkout stand. And that means that I am basically absorbing the time cost of what normally a service that would be provided by Target for all the things I'm buying. Like, instead of having someone ring the stuff up and bag it for me, I have to do all that myself. And I'm still paying the same amount.
Right.
Like, that's the sort of weird indignity that it's commonplace. Every business has it. And we all just accept it, because what's the alternative? Like, it's not even a thing where it's like, well, I'll just, go to the checkout line that has an employee working there. Depending on what time of night you go, that could be none of them.
Yeah, they might have.
You're just walking out of Target without buying anything then.
Or there's 4 people in front of you that have full carts.
Yeah, there's no way to, like, take a stand on this. It just, we all just eat it. That's it.
So, last night, it was a Wednesday, I left the store a little bit early because I was going to Regal at the Block to see the Fathom production of Doctor Who, The End of Time, the last 2 episodes that David Tennant was in as the 10th Doctor. And at about 6:40, you're like, aren't you leaving? And I'm like, I'll get there. It's at the Block, whatever.
I wasn't trying to rush you out the door.
I know. But in hindsight, you were exactly correct, because traffic was annoying to get there.
Yeah.
People were... Like, I had to go up to the second level of park. Fine, who cares? I don't care what level I have to park on. But when there's one person waiting on the ramp because he thinks somebody is going to be backing out of a space, that makes 4, 5, 6 cars behind him have to wait. No one can get around. So by the time, and I already had my ticket on my phone, because I bought it on my phone and paid a convenience fee.
Of course.
To bypass both the kiosks that all 3 are never working in the lobby and the ticket counter, they only have one guy checking tickets. You know the guy.
Yes.
And he's using a phone to scan barcodes.
And it's not working.
And the line is massive. And I'm just standing there like oh my God, I'm gonna. And it's a Fathom event, so it means it says it starts at 7. It starts at 7. There's not 20 minutes of previews or Maria Menounos talking about Nuvi or what have you. It's a 7 o'clock thing, and the line is taking forever. And there's like he's got like he can't read anybody's codes. Not his fault. It's the technology.
Sure.
And then 2 people from me have a big problem, and they have this paper that he can't understand, so he has to call a manager and send, like, at least he sends them to the
he gets them
help desk. Yeah. So anyway, it's my turn to go up there. He can't read my ticket. He's like, what is this movie even? He gets the Doctor Who thing. He's like, okay, that's like, I don't, Theater 3. So he just waves me in.
Yep.
So for the second time in a row, it looks like, because they don't get a record of me seeing that movie because nothing ever got scanned, I don't know if that's going to, in some way, count against me. But anyway.
Well, didn't you just buy that ticket? Or did you get it through the Unlimited?
No, I bought the ticket online.
So it doesn't matter.
But I mean, but at least, like, I don't know. Well, also, no snacks. Had to go right to the theater.
That sucks. I know you said you were going to get popcorn and soda.
I got in at 7 o'clock, and they were already showing part of the interview. I'm like, what the... Come on! Anyway, it was great seeing it. A little giant screen. I had a wonderful time. It was a happy, festive Doctor Who crowd.
That's cool.
Then, when I leave, the person in front of me leaving the parking lot didn't pay their ticket ahead of time. They can't... getting in, the woman in front of me getting the ticket from the machine couldn't reach the machine.
Great.
So you had to readjust a car, reaching, can't do it, reach it, opens the door, reaches. I'm like, oh my God, come on. On the way out, the people in front of me hadn't paid. So they're like putting your credit card in, it gets spit out. Putting credit card. I literally backed up, and luckily, you know how they have plastic medians in between.
Sure. For
the 3 lanes for the parking to leave.
Yeah.
Somebody earlier had run over them, so there was a space so I could back up and go to the next one.
Great.
And then I'm like, all right, well, I'm starving. I stop at Subway on the way home. Subway was so crowded, every single table inside was full.
Wow.
There was a family of 4 in front of me.
Busy Wednesday night.
And this family of 4 they needed 4 sandwiches.
Sure.
And each sandwich had a ton of ingredients and all these things. And the little kid was screaming about wanting water from the cooler. And the dad's like, no, you're going to get water from the dispenser. Like, but I want the water now. And then I want chips. I want this. I want that. 15 minutes just for that family.
Wow.
And it's one guy working.
Yeah.
Because it's
only ever one guy working.
It's 10 p.m. on a Wednesday. Like, I'm sure they're like, I don't know, like, why would you have more?
Sure.
It was everything about going to that event was frustrating, but the event itself was
at least
not.
The event itself was good.
But the point about you're paying for the convenience. Like, there was no convenience.
Everything was inconvenient.
Yes.
I should be getting money
indeed.
back.
Yes. Indeed. So we always look at trying to do new things to make, like, look at the technology that we're using now for credit card processing, how the machine we're using, it's like our I don't know, 5th or whatever thing we've had.
Sure.
And it's the fastest it's been.
I think so.
And sometimes it's never fast enough,
Yeah.
But we're trying to make it easier, and with Apple Pay and Google Pay and all of those different things. But I literally don't know. Do we pay the same, more, or less for Apple Pay?
I could try and look into it. I think it's the same.
It shouldn't be anymore.
Yeah, processing
because
is processing.
we're doing less.
Yeah.
But maybe there's a convenience fee for using your phone to pay.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'd have to double check, but I don't think I've seen anything that says that contactless payment is more expensive for us.
This is Contest of Challengers, a comics industry business podcast on the Yak Channel Podcast Network in Chicago. I feel like I might have to adjust that to a comic book business entrepreneurial podcast because now that we've changed officially
in a different category
our ranking,
on the podcasts.
The shopping category has gone away from business. And first of all, we got an email from a company this week that manages listings and lets you know how you're doing, and it's a free service, but they want you to sign up and they can help you promote, and then there's pay levels and all these things, and I don't know what it was. It was like Rankcaster or something.
Sure.
But it had such ridiculous statistics for the reach of this podcast. In the first line of the email that you could see on the lock screen, it said that we are number on iTunes business podcasts, we're now number 724. And I thought, all right, that's a number.
It is a number.
That sounds high to me, but
it sounds
whatever.
really high.
Well, it gets even higher because in the body of the email, it's like, here's your rankings in other countries. And it's like, Canada, you're number 17 for Apple business shopping podcasts. And they were all such high numbers. And my favorite was in Sri Lanka, we were number 10.
That's great.
And I pulled up the list and I read to you what we were behind. And it's ridiculous. Like, here's how to Etsy. Here's an Etsy-based podcast. Here's a Google-based podcast. Like, they were all major platform names.
Sure.
All how-tos and things. And then number 10, Contest of Challengers.
Is there not a category just for comic books?
No.
Really?
No, there isn't.
So
also,
what are like the comic book podcasts off panel? Like, what is that under?
I don't know, as a podcast follower, how to find out the category, because I did that before. I'm like, well, what are these other podcasts? It doesn't tell you.
Huh.
I guess, like, if you want to start searching...
Could you ask Harper? Like,
I could.
Like, hey,
I
man,
guess. Sure.
What do you put your podcast
Sure.
under?
But, I mean, most other comics podcasts where people talk about the books of the week, we wouldn't want that category anyway.
I don't know.
That's not what we do.
I think it's very close to what we do. I mean, not that we do a lot of review stuff, but, I mean, I don't think interviews with creators and reviews of current comics and dissecting comic news and publishing news and retail stories about comics retail, I think those all occupy the same space for me as far as, like, comic book podcasts.
Well, our main listing is business.
I know.
We could change it to entertainment.
Well, I'm just curious. Like, I don't know if that would help with discovery at all, or if it's just completely, like you said, if it's invisible
Is that what you
to
want?
people.
You want more people telling you to listen to this?
Well, if we're doing this, I'd rather people get something out of it.
Sure.
I mean, I'd rather more people listen to it than less. I don't care either way.
You just don't want them to tell you.
It doesn't affect how I do this. It's fine. If it's 10 people or 10 million people, I don't care. We're not monetizing this in any serious way, so it's kind of... If it grows or it doesn't grow, that's why I laugh a little bit when people are like, hey, with more money, we can help you grow your podcast. Like, I don't care. What are we getting out of this?
Well, I mean, ultimately, if people become patrons, that's monetizing it.
But even then, like, most of that just gets spread around to other Patreons.
To other patrons,
Like, it's
that's
not
true.
a big deal.
Yeah.
We don't have sponsors. It's not, like, our livelihood. We do this for...
I mean, we would. We wouldn't say no to sponsors. We had the Mac Tutor in the past.
That's true. Yeah, I mean... But it's... I don't know. I don't look at it as, like, this is what I want to concentrate more on and put more energy into and try and grow that. No, I got a business I want to do that on. That's
Sure.
what my time and energy and thoughts go into. It's
well,
not this.
We always talked about how it would be beneficial to us if we could get the people that we interacted with regularly to sponsor. Like, if Potbellies was a sponsor, then
Sure.
you could get your Monday sandwich.
Chipotle, for sure.
Yeah,
God,
if Chipotle
man.
wanted to be a sponsor, sure. Things like that. But that's avenues that we could actively seek. We just choose not to.
Yeah, and I think some of that is just... Maybe it's just me, but I have a very... What I feel is a very realistic appraisal of the reach of Contest of Challengers. Maybe that's humble, maybe it's misguided, but I don't think I would have the confidence to go to a nationwide chain and say to their franchisee, oh, by the way, you should definitely advertise on our podcast. It's going to help you sell a lot more burritos or whatever. Like, I don't know that it will. I don't think that's us.
We'd have to be a lot more progressive in our stat collecting to be able to show them
Even
hard
still.
figures.
Like, there's things we got... somebody reached out to us. It's for a charity thing, so I'm not really, like, upset about it. But to advertise for a live podcasting festival, I guess they're doing.
Yeah.
And, like, just the idea... We've done, a live episode, and it was pretty bad. But the idea of, like, live podcast episodes and that sort of, like, the reach you're going to get and the exposure your business is going to get, it's like, it's a podcast. I don't think that's valuable for a business to advertise on. I guess unless you have, like, what, Stamps?
Well,
Stamps.com, don't they advertise on every single podcast?
Blue Chew,
I don't know what that is.
let's just say Blue Chew.
Okay.
Blue Chew is a very, very popular sponsor.
Okay.
It is chewable Viagra.
Oh, okay.
And, like, that's on a lot of podcasts I listen to.
Weird.
Stamps.com, of course.
Wonder why.
The podcast thing, they weren't asking us to be part of it. They want money.
I know. They were asking us as a business to advertise.
Yeah.
But I was still thinking about it in terms of, like...
But, Dal, you misunderstand. We would be the one and only comic shop associated with this festival.
Yeah, I was looking at it both in terms of as a business that was being asked to advertise, where it's like, oh, I do not feel like advertising at a podcast festival would be a valuable use of my non-existent advertising dollars. But also as someone who is on a podcast, who does a regular podcast, I can't imagine going to someone and saying, oh yeah, it would definitely be valuable for you to advertise on this podcast.
I have the... not opposite feelings about that, but whenever a podcast, like a week, there's a lot of podcast festivals in Chicago, and when somebody asks us to advertise, my thought is, why don't you ask us to be on it?
Oh, Jesus.
I mean, we have no ideas for what a live show would be.
No.
And while we did a live show, it was our 100th episode, and we thought, we didn't do anything different. We just had a crowd.
Yeah, and I mean, very quickly, it was patron Thomas Nagovin who was basically like, "This is terrible. Let me fix this for you."
No, it was a Q&A thing, and he had all the cues.
Okay, I
So
remember,
we just brought him up to be the host. Really,
I remember him being very frustrated, I guess, in the early stages by how formless what we were doing was, and how it was not necessarily taking advantage of the live audience component. And I remember him stepping in very quickly to try and energize the audience part of it.
Or give it structure.
In a way that we were not necessarily doing that, because we were just doing what we normally did, which is the same sort of nonsense, non sequitur shit talking that we start most of these episodes with.
We also were hoping that people that showed up to be part of a live audience would have questions for us.
No, they were just there to be entertained.
Right. And they were. Thanks to Tom.
Yeah, eventually.
Look, that's another reason why we're not in the entertainment category, because neither of us assume this is in any way entertaining. Practical,
I would not
hopefully.
go that far.
Hopefully.
I think it's entertaining.
To others.
Yeah. What, like to me? No, it's not entertaining to me.
Well, your attitude isn't entertaining to me either.
This is part of my job. Why would I be entertained?
AWA, not the American Wrestling Alliance, has announced their first major book.
What does AWA stand for again?
Artists, Writers, and Artisans.
Okay. That's the Bill Jemas one?
Yes.
Okay.
Their launch book.
Axel Alonso, I guess,
their
is the other one.
pinnacle book, there's three people.
But there's
an A, a W, and an A.
Those are the two that I remember seeing regularly.
Well, yeah, there's two comic guys and a business guy.
Okay.
Their first book is called Resistance.
Okay.
It sets the stage for their entire universe.
Oh, God, it's a universe.
It is not just a universe, it's a world in which a thing happens where 15 to 20 million people get superpowers.
Cool.
And this is about that. And it's basically their premise is, hey, if you were a dick before this event, now you're a dick with superpowers.
Cool.
If you were a really nice person before this happened, now you're a really nice person with superpowers.
Awesome.
And it is the linchpin of their universe. And
That's
any guesses
great.
on the creative team?
It's
I
all
will
I can
tell
do not
you-
to fall asleep during this.
I will tell you that these
Sure.
are creators that have worked together under Axel Alonso's guidance.
Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Connor.
I was going to say you have the first letter of the first name.
Garth Ennis.
So one of these creators
Who
is
else does he love who's not already working for Marvel?
who didn't.
Warren Ellis.
What if it's someone who just left working for Marvel?
Who just left working for Marvel? I don't even know.
It's funny because this person had 2 books out last week alone, one from Marvel and one not from Marvel.
Okay.
Oh, I thought I could spin this rack and make it easier for you, but it's hidden behind something.
Okay.
I think it's...
Jerry Dugan?
Nope, other one.
Mike Deodato?
Mike Deodato.
Okay.
Mike Deodato, who left Marvel to work on creator-owned stuff like Berserker Unbound,
Okay.
is reuniting with his Amazing Spider-Man creator,
Oh, Straczynski?
J. Michael Straczynski and Mike Deodato are the creative team on The Resistance.
Okay.
And The Resistance comes out in the
I hope it's 2005, because otherwise no one's going to care.
in the spring of
Is
2020.
it coming out in 2005?
2020.
Oh, 15 years later.
And this
okay,
this
cool.
is the start book. And
Cool.
this goes off of a question that someone else had posed, and I posed it to you.
Why? Question mark, question mark, question mark.
A publisher comes to you and says, hey, we're starting a new superhero universe.
Uh-huh.
As a retailer, are you A, I'm in, let's do it. B, why don't you tell me more about it? And then I'll decide. C, no thank you.
Yeah, it's C, no thank you.
It's basically C, no thank you. Only because the market has shown us that with, look at humanoids and their new, like, oh, Mark Waid and John Cassaday are in charge of our universe now. It's cohesive and it's a shared universe. And here's the first couple books, and Ignited, which I liked. We started with 5 copies and didn't sell 5 copies.
Yeah.
And now we're down to like 0 copies.
It's a market that's not working great. I was reading a letter from a very prominent writer who has a new volume of one of their more famous creator-owned books coming out soon.
Oh, I think I know.
And they had mentioned that they were aware that it's not a great market for indie books. And I would like kind of argue with this that the last thing the industry needs is more superhero comics. I don't know what it needs, but it's not more superhero comics.
I will tell you this. As a reader, I am always up for a good, solid superhero concept. I am not up for a whole new superhero universe.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's the thing. I mean, Marvel and DC have a pretty good lock on...
I will call it like Invincible. A good superhero concept that, while it had its own universe, it was its own thing.
Yeah, but I never wanted to read Guarding the Globe or whatever
Right,
else. I
sure,
didn't care.
right.
I just read Invincible.
You're saying Marvel and DC?
Yeah, Marvel and DC have huge superhero universes that have existed for decades and have the majority of fans for superhero comics are reading those two companies. And those two companies put out a ton of books. The idea of putting out a new superhero universe that's competing with those, not just like new comics, but you are actively competing with that part of the market, seems insane to me. Even if you could hire away every good creator, and even if you had, Jeff Bezos money to put into this, you don't have Spider-Man, you don't have Batman, you don't have the X-Men. Doesn't matter. Unless you have those properties that people have already invested in.
But Dal, listen. When the DC Universe was created, and I realize I said that fast, when the DC Comics universe was created, in the 40s and 50s, it was a different, simpler time, and all of their heroes are basically cops. Batman is a cop. Superman is a space cop. Green Lantern is a space cop. Hawkman is a space cop. Then you got the Marvel Universe in the 60s, where it was more younger and rebellious, and it's either, hey, Thor and Hulk, who can do whatever they want and no one can tell them what to do, or Spider-Man, who's downtrodden, man of the people. AWA is redefining the universal paradigm for now. What is the world today? What would the superheroes of today be like? I'm assuming they would entirely be like
I don't care.
The Seven
Yeah,
from The Boys. On their phones all the time.
This is exactly
just doing YouTube videos.
This is exactly the Humanoids pitch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Superheroes, but speaking to today's audiences, for today's fans, and it's like today's fans. I'm not saying there aren't people who will look at something from a new publisher and go, God, that reflects me in a way that I never thought I'd see from another publisher. I've got to read that. The majority of fans, though, who are looking for progressive superheroes or progressive creators, are finding versions of that at companies that already have huge brand recognition. They don't need a brand new superhero from a brand new superhero universe. They'll get a brand new superhero from the DC universe like Naomi. Or they'll read Jane Foster Valkyrie. Or whatever. Like, Marvel and DC are not the most progressive companies by a long shot. But what they do have is creators and characters that are able to, maybe in more niche-oriented roles, speak to fans and get them involved. And, again, it's not like those fans who are looking for, brand new, modern paradigm heroes like Batman any less. They're still reading Batman. House of X and Powers of 10 are the hottest books on the market right now, and the X-Men have existed in more or less the same form that you're seeing them in those books for like 40 years. Or more? More? 40-something years?
1963.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm looking at the
All new, all different?
Yeah, Giant Size X-Men.
Okay. When you said in those version. Forms, I meant a guy with wings, guy with laser beams out of his eyes.
No, I mean when Claremont got a hold of it.
Okay.
Which this feels like, an evolution of that rather than...
Wow, such a spit in the face to Len Wein.
Take that, Neil Adams.
While we were talking about humanoids, I want to jump back to something that is going around. I don't know if you've seen this, but I believe it was a panel from this week's Ignition. Somebody took a panel where one of the characters is talking about something else, relettered it, and is passing it around, and it's the main character saying, I don't think I'm a fascist. I just want to tell everybody what to do. And passing it off as...
Like an actual panel from the book?
Yeah.
Because people are terrible?
Yes.
Great.
So, on Mark Wade's behest, we had, on the Facebook page, shown, like, hey, this is what the actual panel was. The weird thing about it was the book is lettered in a very unique style, and when they put their own lettering in. They used a very basic comic font.
Sure. So it's not even convincing.
But I mean,
but people who are already ready to be offended
or
by progressive politics
only see that one panel. There's no context.
Yeah, they just want to get mad about people not like them, I guess.
Yeah, and
in general.
Mark Waid's point was, normally I wasn't going to even say anything about this, but I don't want the people that worked on this book.
They don't deserve it.
Exactly. Yeah. If you hate me, I don't care. Fine, but the people that
making stuff
did
up
this,
about it. I mean, it's bad enough that people will automatically push back on anything that's not like them. But then to have it be so disingenuous to ascribe completely false motivations as some sort of straw man argument, like, it's just terrible.
I mean, I don't agree with a lot of viewpoints that people have in the world today. But if you have to lie to me to get your point across, you don't have a point.
Yeah. And people who just want to believe it because they want to believe that the people they despise them too. It's weird. I don't love it.
But fortunately, there's enough good comics that have a reflection of the actual world outside your window, where it doesn't matter if a woman, a Korean woman, is writing a comic book and you don't like it. Don't read it.
Why would that bother somebody? I mean,
no idea.
I'm not looking for an explanation because it's inexplicable, but it's just one of those things that you see people get viscerally, inhumanly angry, and it's like, what? It's like, some woman you don't know is writing a book you'd never read anyway? Like, what are you mad about?
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, racism. Oh, okay, got it. Never mind.
But, on the other hand, it does get people who really had no other interest in comics to say, hey, this isn't right, I'm going to go buy that comic just because.
Yeah, hopefully
it's opening up a world for them that they're going to like really dig. Like, just, I bought a hat today on the internet.
Really?
I did. A baseball cap, which I don't ever wear baseball caps, really.
Not often.
I have a handful of them. I used to have a bunch more, but I have a handful.
I have one I never wear.
But I wanted to, and I like the idea of, in the summer, I don't, whatever.
Right.
And also, it was $25 for the hat, plus shipping, plus tax.
Oof. Convenience fee.
So it was a $32 hat.
Credit card charge.
But it is a hat specifically for a 2020 Senate candidate.
Okay.
In Kentucky.
Okay.
Amy McGrath.
Okay.
And I felt that was...
she's running against McConnell, right?
That was a positive way to contribute to her campaign.
Yeah, donate.
So, I mean, active resistance, fine. But I'm not going to... I don't know what my point was. Make a fake hat?
Right.
And say people are wearing that, or... Yeah. There's ways... No, my point was I bought the hat to show support of a thing that I care about. I could have just given money, but
sure.
At least I may wear the hat.
Sure.
And if I use the hat and like the hat, it would be like a new person buying an Agents of Atlas or an Arrow and liking it and saying, oh man, I look good in hats. I'm going to keep wearing hats.
Sure.
Maybe there's an added bonus to just the idea of...
To amplifying a message?
Yeah.
Sure.
A signal boost. No, that's not what I meant at all. It's not what I meant at all. Did you read the new Tilting at Windmills?
I was about 2/3 of the way through it when you suggested that we record an episode of the Contest of Challengers Comics Industry Business Podcast.
Well, it's talking about buying graphic novels
yes.
to resell in your store,
yeah.
which is a thing we do.
Yeah.
And Brian Hibbs from Comics Experience and the Comics Experience Outpost in San Francisco is basically laying out all the different options retailers have. Yeah. And he's backing it up with a lot of monetary statistics, which are helpful.
Specialty.
Yeah, of course.
I want to say.
And it's not a new concept, but it's a concept like people might not realize how much money they're losing on dwindling discounts and things.
He specifically goes into talking about discounts and that sort of thing is pretty common, but I appreciated that he started to go into kind of the hidden cost of shipping and how shipping costs for Diamond is insane, especially
so nebulous
compared to other we get from we used to do Baker Taylor, but we do Ingram now, and Ingram as long as you hit a minimum, which is like maybe 15 books,
Yeah.
it's like $1.75 for shipping.
It's just a fuel
Yeah,
surcharge.
it's a fuel surcharge.
It's a convenience fee that they have to pay that they're tacking on.
But the idea of a box of books, as long as it's more than like 15 graphic novels or even 15 units, so it could be 15 little golden books,
right,
way next to nothing.
Right.
But with Diamond, it doesn't matter if it's one book or 1,500 books. The more of them that you have them shipped, the more it's going to cost. There's no savings by ordering more. You're actually paying more money.
But there's also no chart as to this much weight costs this much, this many boxes cost this much. Nobody has ever been able to figure out. You could add up your shipping charges every week and divide it by the number of boxes, the number of pounds, the number of units. There is never going to be an equal measurement system in place.
And it can be difficult sometimes to even just kind of budget because you won't get a shipping charge until after you've received the product. So it's not like when you order it, you'll see a subtitle on the screen that goes, oh, this is how much you're going to be paying for shipping for all this stuff. You order this stuff and then it's like, this is how much you paid.
We order the same amount of reorder dollar amount roughly per week.
Roughly, yeah.
But the way the shipping fees are calculated, it's insane where we're roughly paying, like, let's say an average week for reorder and direct shipment is $180 in shipping. Let's say on average. That's not an accurate number, but let's just say that's our average. Some weeks our bill is $60. Some weeks our bill is $240. Like this week, next week's invoice, we had like a $64 shipping charge. Why is it only $64? Mm-hmm. What? So next week it's going to be up to $300.
Yeah.
Just because they have to catch up. Yet we didn't order at a different time. The books weren't shipped out on a different time. It's just a random how they calculate.
Yeah.
And it's never been a thing that has been understood. In his article, Brian mentioned how much he paid last year in shipping, and it made me go look ours up. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot, but not as much as his because he has 2 stores.
Sure.
It is definitely a lot of money, but it's also like, oh, you want weekly new comics? What choice do you have? But in response to that article, Joe Field posted his current top 20 graphic novels for the year list. Mm-hmm. And I know that I just did this and I couldn't remember for who, so I couldn't look it up. But what was neat about Joe Field from Flying Colors and other cool stuff in California, Concord, California, on his list of top 20, over half of it are all ages books.
Yeah.
There's multiple books we've never carried.
Okay.
His number 4 book was a book called Grave.
Okay.
It's an IDW Dan Fraga graphic novel.
Weird.
And that is we've never stocked it, ever.
I wonder sometimes.
Yes, they had an event with Dan Fraga.
Yeah.
Also, their Green Lantern hardcovers are very high. They have had events with Liam Sharp.
Sure.
But the same way our lists always reflect that.
And that's why I wonder that. Because
but
there's been years I've looked at it and gone, how did we... Oh, right, they were here for an event. We sold 40 copies that day.
Or we had a class that had to get this old Batman book.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Also, high on his list, Sarah, the Garth Ennis book from that company you have to order direct from.
Yeah, I don't remember their name.
I don't either. And ironically, they are a sponsor of the Off Panel podcast.
I'm going to look them up.
So, yeah, that's high on his list, and it's a book that we carried once. I mean, we ordered multiple copies, and we should probably, if their second wave of books are out with their Jeff Lemire book and their Roxanne book,
Studios.
Yes, if their second wave is out, we should definitely reorder. And I mean, you know, but and then there was a book called Bargain Comic Strip Book, which I couldn't even find. Like I googled that phrase and nothing came up.
Maybe it's just something they have in their system.
Maybe, it's interesting, but. Otherwise, a bunch of Dogmans, a bunch of Reynas, the Marvel Adventures-esque Venom book.
Okay.
You know?
Sure.
Like stuff. Yeah, it's fascinating.
I was complaining to someone the other day that I cannot believe that we still don't have, in a time where DC's like, ages and stages is our whole publishing motto now. Like, we want Batman comics that follow people through their lives so they can have a mature readers one, and they've got like 1 billion mature readers Batman and Joker books, and yet there's not a single all ages Batman, not Bruce Wayne or Catwoman, Batman comic book I can sell to kids.
Ongoing comic book,
yeah.
Not a Zoom or an ink graphic
pick
novel.
up a comic off the rack that is appropriate for younger readers where it's Batman in a Batman costume fighting a Batman villain for an issue. Like, how does that still not exist? That is something I get asked about on an almost weekly basis from families coming in.
Do another Batman Adventures comic.
Yeah, because even like the Batman Brave and the Bold stuff, it does okay, but they want a comic book, and there's not a comic book I can give them. So the idea of like, oh, it needs to be a graphic novel or something, like, oh my god, yes, eventually that too, please, but we do get families coming in who just want a $4 comic book for their kid.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of families that will gladly put down money for a series of $12 graphic novels as long as the kid's excited about reading them. But we get families that want, single My Little Pony comics, single Spider-Man comics, single Marvel comic books.
I had joked that...
Why there's not a Batman one?
I joked to you that they should just let IDW do it.
Yeah, which, fine. If it'll get the book out on the market, and clearly it would, do that.
We cannot keep those Marvel Action Spider-Mans in stock.
No, they're great.
We just have like 1 or 2 copies of issue 5 again, and we've restocked the first couple numerous times.
And we'll do another big reorder on those and the Marvel Superhero Adventures books this weekend. But yeah, it's so dumb that DC as a publisher will do a limitless number of Batman comics, but he swears a lot and there's blood and nudity, but they can't seem to do one Batman comic book for kids. And young adult stuff.
Maybe that's why. Maybe they don't want to do one for kids, knowing there's adult ones.
Batman's kid in this Zoom book, or Batman but he answers letters from fans in this Zoom book. How about one where he's Batman in a cape and he punches the Riddler in the face? Like, how about that for a change?
Sure.
There's your million copy idea. Makes me angry.
Did you want to discuss the ordering pitfalls of House and Powers?
Sure. I guess we can just cover this for people who are maybe going to be confused or mystified by the inability for people to get copies of those books at their local stores. I stopped by Challengers Comics and Conversation on Western Avenue earlier today to drop off some prints for an upcoming event with Caroline Cash.
Oh, you mean next Wednesday's release event for Girl in the World?
August 14th, 7 p.m., reading and signing with Caroline Cash, Silver Sprockets, Girl in the World. But when I was dropping those off, I was talking to Kent Challenger, who was working today, and I mentioned to him that in case anyone had asked him, because we were probably going to sell out of House of X #2 today, that we do have copies of the second print on order. They'll just be coming in a couple weeks. And he said, I think at that point in the day, which was around 2:30, we had 4 copies left.
Wow.
That's across all covers. That he already had someone who'd come in who had been to 3 different stores in Chicago that were all sold out. And then while I was there and he was putting some boxes out in the supply section, I was behind the counter and I rang up somebody who was getting House of X1, Powers of 10-1, House of X2. I heard these were really good. They really are. So here's the main problem. House of X and Powers of 10 are 2 6-issue series that over 12 weeks are coming out weekly. What that means as far as ordering for stores goes is that we were locking in numbers for the 3rd week's worth of books before we'd even gotten sales data on the first week.
Issues 5 and 6, basically, or 3 and 3.
I was going to say House of X2 that came out this week. We had to put our numbers in for that before we'd sold a single copy of House of X #1.
Right.
So we ordered what we felt like it was a very healthy number for House of X1. And as it turns out, we were right, because we still have a lot of copies left. There's plenty of stores that have none. Marvel's moving on to a 3rd printing of that book, which means there's still unmet demand in the direct market for House of X1. We still have plenty of copies, both of the main cover and of several of the variants. We will have House of X1 probably until Powers of 10-6 comes out at the end. But we had to order the next issue of that before we'd even gotten sales data for the first one. And an open secret for the direct market is that sales drop across the board from issue 1 to issue 2 of anything. If you sell 100 copies of issue 1 of something, most stores are going to order somewhere between 50 and 75 copies of issue 2 because that is the usual drop-off. It could be as high as 50%, but it's probably going to be around 25%.
A lot of people try the first issue, don't come back. Some people want to wait for the trade because they know they like it. Some people bought multiples of the first one because it was number 1.
Some people just like issue 1s. It doesn't matter how good it is. They just buy issue 1s. They're not going to buy 2s or 3s or 4s or 5s.
And I feel like we've mentioned this before, but we ordered 5 times our current Uncanny numbers because we had faith in it. And 5 times is, if we ordered 5 times, like if, let's say Thor just ended, King Thor is coming out, we're not doing 5 times our Thor numbers for King Thor, even though it's a different artist.
Yeah.
We're ordering roughly the same.
Yeah, we'll order a little higher, maybe, because it's a number 1, and there's people who will jump on it a number 1 no matter how late in the game it is.
Now, we do know this was a major overhaul and something that the industry's been asking for years, but going higher than 5 times was not financially viable. It didn't make sense on paper. So even dropping from number 2, we're still ordering how many times our normal Uncanny numbers?
So to give people a little bit of background on how House of X was performing for us before it even came out, with Uncanny X-Men, we probably had 20-something people down for the book on a subscription level.
Yeah.
All of them we copied over to House of X and Powers of 10 because that's the X-Men books for 3 months.
Yeah.
Nobody told us they didn't want it who was getting Uncanny X-Men. On top of that, we had people who were excited about Jonathan Hickman coming to the X-Men books, and they thought this would be a good time for them to jump back on. Or they were sort of curious, but they thought they'd give it a go. So our numbers for subscriptions went up from about mid-20s to a couple weeks before release. I think we were around 60-something, like 66. I think we were at for House of X and Powers of 10, which is really high. But we still had plenty of copies for the rack for issue 1 of House of X.
I honestly think it was 59.
Okay.
At the point number 1 came out.
Okay. Sure. I don't know if I'd even be able to go back and check with the way our system works, but okay, sure.
But I mean, that's my point is like right when number 1 came out, not at FOC. At FOC it was lower.
Right. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, at FOC it was
FOC, as a reminder, is the point where we lock our orders in for the first issue,
which is going to be important. That takes place basically 3 weeks before the book comes out from premier publishers like Marvel and DC.
Unless it has an acetate cover.
Because that's when they're going to press on it. So once that happens, they're setting their print run numbers based on the orders they're receiving from stores. They may do an overprint. We're never really notified if that's the case, and in general, Marvel as a company tends not to do a really healthy overprint. If they overprint, it's going to be like a single-digit percentage of what they normally order, or what they normally produced, to accommodate damages, shortages, replacements that they need to do. But they're not stocking a ton of extra copies so that stores can reorder them. They will go to second prints and third prints for that. That's how their business model works. So what you order on FOC from Marvel is almost always gonna be what you can get. You can't, a week after release, decide you want more copies. They're all gone. So House of X number 1, we ordered a healthy number. What every store in America, probably in the world, does with issue 2s is they go down. If you assume that 100% of the people who bought issue 1 are going to buy issue 2, you are going to get stuck with a lot of copies of issue 2. They're going to go unsold because that number is almost never correct. So if you're smart and you want to save money and not get caught with a ton of product you can't sell, you reduce your orders for issue 2 to make up for the people that, like Patrick said, for a variety of reasons, are not going to come back for that issue. So for us, we went down, I'm trying to think, on the main cover, we went down, what does that work out to? Like 30%?
30% is what I was going to say.
35%?
Yeah.
Still, again, a very high number. And we had a bunch of variant covers that we were getting as well. So if you incorporate those as well, we were going down a little bit less, probably like 30%.
Oh, and what we've been finding, if I may jump in, for House of X number 1, people weren't buying multiple covers.
Yeah.
For the most part, they were just buying the cover they wanted.
Yeah, a lot of our orders for House of X1 and Powers of 10-1 were based on the idea of, X-Men fans are going to want a bunch of these covers. And we'd had some people who were asking us to subscribe them to a variety of covers. So we thought, casual fans are going to come in and they're going to look at the 4 covers on the rack and buy all 4. They didn't. Sometimes they'd buy 2, but most of the times they just bought the one they thought was the best.
Which means these books are getting into even more hands than we expected.
Yeah. That we don't have a ton of extra copies that will be left over because fans aren't buying multiples. No, we need every one of those copies to meet demand. So we lock in our numbers for issue 2 before issue 1 comes out. And we went down. We didn't go down a ton, as we probably could have, but we went down a percentage. And every store in America did that. Now, the problem that a lot of stores are facing this week and why we're getting people coming in looking for copies because their stores are already sold out is because a lot of stores did not anticipate the demand for issue 1 the way that we did. Like I said, we still have copies of issue 1 of House of X because we took a very aggressive stocking position. If stores were more moderate in how they approached it, not only did they sell out of House of X 1, but then when they reduced their numbers for House of X 2, they had even less to go around. For our case, while we reduced our numbers, the bigger problem was that most of the people who were buying issue 1 were signing up for it as a subscription, which means they were definitely going to be getting issue 2 and 3 and 4. Our subscriptions went up from, like Patrick said, maybe around like 60 copies for issue 1 around FOC, or maybe 70 around the time the issue came out. We're at now, as of today, we're at 100 copies subscription for House of X. It's our most subscribed to title in the store.
If it keeps going, it will be our most subscribed to book ever.
Yeah, it is. We are within spitting distance of basically having 0 copies of the main cover of House of X for the shelf if it keeps going up over the next few days the way it has the last few days. So, like, that's because we had to lock in our numbers because we had no idea how House of X number 1 was going to sell. Because we ordered non-returnable, we had to come up with a number that if it sold worse than we anticipated, we wouldn't get killed on it. But in reality, we probably should have ordered about 95 to 100% of what we ordered for House of X number 1.
Yeah.
And that would have accommodated. Because as you, Patrick, pointed out the other day, not only do we have people within the store who had bought House of X number 1 who need House of X number 2, but now we're getting people from other stores that couldn't meet demand. So we could theoretically be selling like 110% of what we sold of House of X number 1 because we have all these extra people who didn't buy 1 from us, but now need 2 and 3 and 4.
And I'm not a comic publisher. I don't set print
really?
runs. But I think that this is... I mean, Marvel, as we talked about for Absolute Carnage, which, by the way, to remind you, they offered the second print of number 1 before we locked in our orders for the first print of number 1, and they just loved doing second and third prints or whatever.
And, by the way, the first print of number 1 was still available on the Monday before release, after they'd already locked in numbers for the second print.
But if you have any faith at all in this as your new flagship, as the new go-to for what your product is going to be, fucking overprint.
Yeah.
Overprint so it's available, and people who missed out now have to wait a minimum of 2 weeks or pay exorbitant second market prices, and they might just say, fuck it, I don't care.
Yeah, especially because it's a weekly series. So if you've got to wait 2 weeks, do you keep buying issues you can't read, or do you wait until you can catch up? And then if you do, maybe the other issues that you skipped are sold out now. Now you're waiting even longer. This
is blatant and deliberate, and there's nothing anyone from Marvel can say to me that makes me think, oh, they made a mistake. No, this is what they always do.
Yeah.
Like, have faith in this thing.
Yeah, we're not saying overship, although I do want to point out the ridiculous nature of the fact that they double shipped us on stuff like Future Foundation number 1 that no one cares about, and that even the number we ordered was way too high, let alone that number now doubled. When, if they would have done that for House of X number 2, we would be writing them love letters.
Right.
Like, why not that? Like, how many stores would have, like, had a much better week?
They don't have any faith in Future Foundation either. There's something they gain from those overships that we don't know. There has to be.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I always think is just, it manipulates the numbers. Like, it enables them to say, ship to direct market, it was 80,000 copies of Future Foundation. Yeah, but only 40,000 were ever paid for. Doesn't matter. They can say 80,000, and that goes on their, sales figures, and they can take it to
the quarterly reports or whatever.
The corporates upstairs to go, hey, by the way, this is how this did. Like, especially if it underperforms.
Man, just imagine if these books were still available for all retailers to get more of.
Yeah.
How many happier readers you'd have.
Sure.
And look, like, this is such a I don't remember exactly how Mitchell quoted it, Mitchell Davies from All-Star, but even when we win, we lose.
Yeah, because again, this is one of those like market under good problems to have, because these books are doing outstanding. It's like I mentioned before on a previous episode, it's exactly what we want a new launch to do from a major publisher. It is getting people to come in on a weekly basis. They're rearranging their schedules to come in earlier in the week and more often because they can't miss an issue or have it spoil on social media. We got so many people that are signing up for subscriptions just to get these books. They're adding on other stuff. Like, they're very excited about the Dawn of X books that are coming out in October. This is not something like a Walking Dead or whatever where they're going to come in one time and you're never going to see them again, or some stupid hot book. This is exactly what we want, where people are engaging with the story. They're excited about what's happening. They can't get enough of it. Like, it's perfect, except for the fact that the publisher didn't support it enough, and now we can't get enough copies to meet demand. Like, what are we going to do when people come in on Sunday and it's just like, no, we don't have the book for you? That's a $5 book I could have sold them a number of times, probably.
And that's a bad taste in their mouth, like, oh, Challengers let them down.
Yeah, and
what about issue 2 of Powers of 10 and issue 3 of House of X?
Mm-hmm. That we're already ordering second prints for, that may or may not fill because we missed the window for second prints by like 3 days.
Yes, we missed the second print window.
Because we didn't get any goddamn data on this stupid book. And one of the things I will not do, and I don't care if it loses us business, and I don't care if it costs us money, but I find it abhorrent to be asked to put in orders for a second print before the first print is shipped. That's the line for me in comics retail, where it's like, no, this is manipulative, this is unnecessary. You're not only are you making me order the first print non-returnable, so I have no idea what it orders, what it's going to sell through, but now you've got your foot on my neck to get me to do a second print, because what if you didn't order enough? So now I'm taking an even bigger gamble, non-returnable, on this second print. No, that's the limit. That's me taking double the risk than I did before. No.
And these books are so good that we are arguing with people about how good they are.
I wouldn't say arguing.
Well, I mean, the discussion that we were having directly before this podcast.
I'll discuss it. I don't want to.
Sure. I don't. It wasn't between us, by the way. It was
right. No, I know, but I hesitate to use the word argue because I don't want to. I enjoy the books a lot, but if someone doesn't or feels like it's not as good as I think it is, that's fine. Plenty of things that I enjoy more than other people. It's okay. But I mean, you can look across the internet, and professional reviewers and amateur fans are all out there saying how great they think this book is and how much they're enjoying it. So I think there's plenty of evidence to point to go, no, it actually is as good as people are saying it is.
And it seems like such a Challengers thing and a Contest of Challengers things to take this thing that worked so well and then to tell you why it's all garbage.
I wouldn't say all garbage either. That's hyperbole. It's just frustrating when we do get successes in the industry that desperately needs them, to look at someone higher up the chain than us that could have done a better job and made things better for everybody, but instead was like, no, I don't want to take that risk. You guys take that risk.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating when someone as big as Marvel, as well capitalized as Marvel Comics as a publisher, is like, no, we don't want to take the risk. What if we lose money? We can't risk that. You guys can lose money. That's fine. Comic shops that are the least capitalized part of the entire distribution chain. Yeah, super frustrating. And again, especially when it's a publisher that seems to have no qualms doing 50% and 100% overships on books we didn't ask for and are not selling well on. And then the high-selling books, it's like, no, you guys can bet on that. Absolute Carnage, House of X, Powers of 10, you guys can gamble on that. But you know what? How about some free copies of Death's Head? How about some free copies of Future Foundation? How about some free copies of Swordmaster? No one cares. No one's asking for this.
Nope.
Thanks, I hate it.
And keep reading comics.
This is The Morning Shift. I'm Jen White. So for our series See, Hear, Eat, we check in with people in the know for their recommendations to help you get the most out of everything Chicago has to offer. Joining me now with his recommendations on what to see, hear, and eat in Chicago this weekend is writer Elliot Serrano, also known as Chicago's King of Geeks.
And I cannot push enough local comic shops in the city of Chicago, namely Challengers Comics and conversation, where they always have great events going on there. If you go there, talk to Patrick and Dal, they're going to give you a great atmosphere, tell you about all the great books that are out. Talk to your kids if you're trying to encourage your kids to read new comics. They have great recommendations there, as well as a reading nook for young kids.
This has been Contest of Challengers. Thanks for listening. Keep reading comics. Challengers is located at 1845 Northwestern Avenue in the Bucktown neighborhood of Chicago. 773-278-0155. Keep up to date with new releases and events at challengerscomics.com. Like Challengers Comics on Facebook, follow @Challengers on Twitter, and help fund this podcast at patreon.com/challengers.
Okay, do you know what? Shove it up your arse.